Coming to you from Campfire Studios in Juneau, Alaska, this is episode 1 of a show let's call Ramblings on Education. Today's episode concerns an often misunderstood and misrepresented piece of learning called student engagement. I went to talk with my brother-in-law Enzo because he went to public school in Fairbanks. I was wondering, was he engaged in school? And by the way, bonus points if you can figure out where he's from by his accent. Nobody else can. So, do you think that you were, engaged in your high school?
Probably not so much. Yeah.
Okay. Why not?
There were probably a couple reasons. One, in math I was always advanced for my grade level, and I was generally ahead of the game in math. And then I took the easy English classes,
Okay.
which didn't challenge me enough.
So what do you think about most of the other students at the Fairbanks school? Were they engaged, do you think?
Probably a little more than me, but not so engaged.
So just how big of a deal is the lack of student engagement in the US? I went to the computer to figure this out. Okay, so I found a source right away about student engagement. It's a Gallup poll. Let's see here. The results were far worse than I expected. The poll measured students' levels of hope, engagement, and well-being through a series of 20 questions. The poll concluded that only 53% of students were engaged, according to their answers on topics like, I have a best friend at school, I feel safe in this school, my teachers make me feel my schoolwork is important, at this school I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. Now, I should mention that the poll was a convenience sample, only of schools that elected to participate, but it had about 850,000 student participants. Convenient or not, that's a lot of disengagement. So let's hear it from a current high school student. Victoria Johnson is a high school student in Palmer, Alaska. I asked her what kinds of things made her more engaged in school.
That would probably be my world history class my freshman year. My teacher was also the debate teacher, so we would have debates, and then my math teacher sophomore year at Palmer, he has some interesting ways to make sure that you remember how to do some vampires and werewolves for positive and negatives. Yeah, it's great.
And her worst teacher?
My gym teacher at Bartlett.
Okay.
He did absolutely nothing. He would just do roll call and then leave us be.
But Victoria had more to say than just about werewolves and debates. She also spoke about the importance of relationships.
All of my teachers seem to really, ever since I moved out to the valley, all of my teachers have seemed to really care more, and they actually want to know, how come you're not doing so good now as you when, last semester or last quarter, whereas my teachers in Anchorage, they were just, she was doing good last year, but she's changed, something's happened, so they really care, and that's what I like.
Next, I thought I'd get a teacher's perspective. I called up Brian Mason, who teaches in Chugiak. I've heard great things about Brian's class and was eager to hear what he says. Here's Brian.
I'm Brian Mason. I have been teaching for, I think, 9 years. I teach biology, AP biology, and forensic science.
So why was he in teaching anyway?
Part of the reason why I chose science education is it provides a lot of opportunities for student-driven investigation, for hands-on learning, and for exploring some of those big why questions.
I asked Brian how he felt about student engagement. I thought he'd surely jump into something about how he got his students in real-world learning or research projects or something like that. Not so fast.
I think that at least where I do a really good job with student engagement is My students know me, they know I like them, and they know I like what I do. And that is 99% of it, really.
I needed another perspective, so I called up Jason Jasperson, a teacher in New Ulm, Minnesota. Jason went to the experiential education program with me, one of the few classroom teachers pursuing the degree. Jason's always been very introspective on teaching.
My name is Jason Jasperson. I teach art classes at Minnesota Valley Lutheran High School, and I've done that for 15 years.
I asked Jason to describe his philosophy on teaching.
Well, I believe I'm not teaching a subject matter as much as I am building people. So I use my subject matter as a means of communicating my philosophy about life and ways of approaching the human condition.
Jason went on to describe that many of his art students are already motivated about art. Of those who are not, he tries to plant the seeds. But the big thing was the relationship.
Well, again, I think it has to go beyond the content. The student has to feel like they're there, that there's a personal connection. You know something about them, you take an interest in them, and then I think that kind of behavior is reciprocal. You model for the student how you want them to act, and that sort of respect and interest, I think, comes back. Maybe not immediately, because I'm dealing with high school students who are very self-conscious and asserting their independence and proud. But plant a seed that starts to germinate if you take care of it.
As another perspective, I called my friend Taylor. Taylor also went to the experiential education program. He had a more typical outdoor education focus. Taylor has worked for a variety of outdoor schools and programs. Right now, he's about to start a semester program in upstate New York.
The students arrive on the 15th, and we have an 8-day canoe expedition to start the semester. And then we will be out at the Yurt Village for about 13 weeks throughout the fall.
Cool.
And there'll be 1 week of that will be in the High Peaks region of the Adirondacks. We'll be on a backpacking trip.
In the outdoors, Taylor has a much more practical view of student engagement. He immediately brought up the topic of environment.
One thing that is very important to think about for me in an old setting or in backcountry setting is that they're living outside, and so working with designated times and really feeling the environment and the students' energy levels is important.
Taylor explained that if it's too hot, or too cold, or students are tired, things just don't go well. His students just can't focus. They must have their basic needs met, and teaching them how to do just that is really the priority. I'll admit, I was expecting something more involved. But it made sense, and I got to thinking. Really, all of this is just Maslow's hierarchy. The idea that in order to do things like care about cognitive subjects, or one's personal growth, the basic needs must be met first. Here's Jason.
Yeah, when you're talking about engagement, you really ask them for a lot. You're going beyond taking a test. You're asking somebody to care. And that's a big investment. It's an emotional investment on the student's part that actually care about the content or the experience or the event. And that, to me, that's the culture piece.
So here I was, expecting a bunch of structural responses. But engagement is more than that. It's something that's difficult. It takes work. And it seems like the critical piece in asking somebody to care is to care back. I'd like to thank my interviewees, Enzo Wendler, Victoria Johnson, Brian Mason, Jason Jasperson, and Taylor Huntley. That's my sister Megan on the guitar. Oh, and you remember Enzo? He's from Fairbanks. He has a British mom, a German dad, and spent some time in France, hence the accent. From Mendenhall Lake in Juneau, this has been Ramblings on Education. Thanks for listening.